guys, it's Emily, and today I'm here to bring you a recent reads video. I've finished 3 books since I last talked to y'all, and I'm in the middle of 2 more books, so let's just get right into it. The first book I want to talk about is City of Glory by Beverly Swerling. This is her second book in the old New York series, which I reread the first book of last month, and then I got this one from Interlibrary Loan, and my goal is to read all 4 of them this year. This follows a character, Dr. Joyful Turner, who was an infant in the last book, at the very end of the last book, and this takes place in the War of 1812 period in, of course, New York City. And so we see how New York dealt with the British attacking and dealt with the attack on Washington. And then we also, Joyful Turner was an Navy surgeon in the War of 1812 for a while, and then his arm got shot up. So then when we see him, he is struggling to figure out what he wants to do with his life now that he no longer can really do surgery, and he's sort of getting into the trading business, but there's been a blockade because of the war, so it's kind of a bad time to get into that business. And then there's also a family treasure that also played a role in the last book that Joyful is interested in claiming, and he's working on doing that. And so we just see his life and the people that he interacts with and all the drama surrounding this period in New York during the war. So it's a really good historical fiction. I would say you don't have to have read the first book, but I also think it would help if you had, because it talks about like family history and things that were referenced in the last book. But yeah, really great historical fiction book, and I've already ordered the 3rd book from Interlibrary Loan to read in June, so I'm looking forward to that. I then listened to a book on audio. I listened to I'd Rather Be Reading, The Delights and Dilemmas of the Reading Life by Bogel. This is a book that I pre-ordered last year, and it came out in September, I believe, and I just never got around to reading it. And because I had pre-ordered it, I got the audiobook for free with my order, so that's why I listened to it. And I listened to it on my walk, and my initial goal was to read 1 essay a day, and then some of the essays are like really short, so I ended up listening to more than one at a time. So these are just little essays about the joys of reading. There's essays about like the joy of using the library. There's essays about going to the bookstore. There's essays about books that defined your childhood. There's essays about learning how to read different things as you grow older. So it's just a really sweet little book about reading and the joys of reading, and yeah, how good it is to be a reader. And Bogel, if you don't know, is the person that writes the Modern Mrs. Darcy blog, and she also has a podcast called What Should I Read Next, which is really popular, and I really love the Modern Mrs. Darcy blog. Before I started YouTube, her blog was like my #1 source for finding out books that I wanted to read, and now her podcast is doing that too, although I haven't listened to her podcast in a while because BookTube has sort of become my place where I find books. But yeah, this is a really sweet little book, and I highly recommend it, and it would be a great gift for somebody who's in your life that might be a reader. But yeah, really recommend this. And speaking of Modern Mrs. Darcy, the 3rd book that I read this month was a book that I first heard about on her blog, and that is So Good They Can't Ignore You. Why Skills Trump Passion in the Quest for Work That You Love by Newport. And I listened to this on audio as well because I had bought it from Libro FM. I had a free code from them, and I bought this book like several years ago, and it's been on my TBR since January 2014. So I'm really glad to finally have gotten to this. This is what I would call a business self-help book. Its main thesis is that there's a lot of emphasis in our society on finding your passion or like following your dreams. And Newport argues that instead of doing that, you should instead get into a job and start building your skills, and then eventually you will gain so much like power in that job, that you will become, it will sort of become your passion, and it'll become a job that you really love, and it'll be work that you really love, because he says that, like, the thing that most people want when they think of their dream job is like freedom and control and like feeling like you're doing something good in the world and things like that. And he's basically arguing that if you become so good at your job that they can't ignore you, you will gain all of those aspects in whatever work you do. So it was a really interesting book. It is kind of repetitive. He repeats a lot of his theses a lot, and he also repeats like concepts from previous chapters over and over in the subsequent chapters. So it's not the most well-written book, but it is an interesting theory, and I do think he is sort of like deliberately over emphasizing the passion aspect, because most people, when they say follow your passion, they're not saying like quit your job and do something that you like totally want to do, because like obviously most people know that if everybody quit their job to become a writer, A, not everybody's going to be successful, and B, the economy would like totally crash. So I think most people, when they say follow your passion, they're saying find something you're like relatively interested in and make a job out of that. Because every person he cites in here as a success story, they had some kind of interest in their work before, like, they didn't start doing a job that they absolutely hated. So to me, it sort of seems like you still have to have interest in your work, but just don't, like, go quit your job to, like, become a surfer or something, So I think there could be a balance that maybe he doesn't really talk about. But anywho, on the whole, really interesting book. I'm glad that I finally read it because, again, it had been on my TBR since 2014. I'm currently in the middle of 2 books. I'm reading A Midwife's Tale, The Life of Martha Ballard, based on her diary 1785 to 1812 by Laurel, Thatcher, and Ulrich. This won the Pulitzer Prize for History back in 1991, so it's a really interesting book, and my parents bought me this book for my birthday about 2 years ago, and I never got around to it. This is about Martha Ballard, who was a midwife in Maine during 1785 to 1812, and it's about her role and the midwife's role in general in society, and how people, when they study like medical history, they tend to focus on doctors, and this is midwives took on a lot of aspects of doctors and did things like healing and bandaging wounds and bleeding and things like that, things that were considered medical, the pinnacle of medical help in that day and age. So yeah, this is a really interesting book, and I'm really enjoying it, and I think I'm going to be able to highly recommend this when I'm done. But yeah, I'm only about 60 pages into this, but I'm really looking forward to getting more into it over the weekend. I'm also reading A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This is a classic that I've heard a lot of people talk about, and a lot of people, it focuses on books and reading and things like that. And I became particularly interested in reading this book when I read When the Books Went to War by Molly Golub. I'll put it down there. But anyway, it talked about how this book was one of the armed service editions in World War II, and it was so popular they had to like make a ton of more copies of it to send to the troops. And this is about Francine Nolan, who lives in Brooklyn in the early 1900s, I believe, and it's just about her life. She's her parents and her family's pretty lower class. They're poor. Her father's an alcoholic and is unable to keep a job for long, and her mother is a very hard woman because she's had to struggle a lot in her life. But it's just about Francie's life and her brother and their doings in Brooklyn. I will say I'm kind of annoyed because there was already a terrible librarian in this book, and as y'all might remember, I'm a librarian, and I am all about getting books into the hands of people that want them, so the librarian in this book really pisses me off. But anyway, overall, it's a really good book, and I'm enjoying it. And I'm, again, going to look forward to digging more into this one over the weekend. So yeah, I hope everybody's having a great day and you're reading some great books. And if you're in America, you have a great 3-day weekend this weekend. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!